Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called I'm Divorcing My Tyrant Husband. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! Robellia's world falls apart when she is unceremoniously cast aside by her husband, Alexandros Castilla, the Emperor of the Castilla Empire. She is devastated beyond repair. The position she has held for so long has been ripped from her, all for a mere concubine, consort Aisha. Her husband even has the gall to tell her that she is merely an accessory for him to access Blanchett's power. He claims that he has never once loved or cared for her, for he only has eyes for Aisha. A girl cries out from utter frustration upon reading this scene of the novel. She doesn't even understand what's so great about the Emperor, compelling the Empress to live a solo life instead. The girl's latest novel craze is entitled The Flower from Another World, and to say that she's engaged is an understatement. However, she is rooting not for the female lead nor the male lead, but for someone entirely unexpected, the first wife of the Emperor. The story goes that the main protagonist travels to another world and ends up winning the Emperor's love in the end. A typical plot, to say the least. However, what doesn't sit well with her is how the Emperor simply turned his back on his faithful wife without a thought. Distraught, Empress Robellia falls ill and dies alone while the shameless couple are busy being lovey-dovey with each other. What's worse is that the moment Robellia is gone, the Emperor is elated to crown Aisha as the new Empress. If this is not a red flag, I don't know what is. After her sympathetic rant on Robellia's behalf, the girl falls asleep, intending to greet a new day once she wakes up. What she does not expect is to wake up in the Castilla Empire, and she has become Empress Robellia Blanchett at that. Thinking that she's in a dream, she does all manner of things to wake up. But after a slap here and a bucket of water there, she finally accepts that this is her life now. She has entered the body of Robellia, someone who has such a tragic end. As she sits in her room, her maid informs her that after 2 weeks, the Emperor has finally granted her an audience with him. Naturally, Robellia doesn't want to see him, for he is the reason why the original Robellia's life has become hell. But then she decides to grab this opportunity instead. No one is going to live her life for her. She determinedly makes her way to the Emperor's study, her goal vivid in her mind. But upon seeing the Emperor's impeccable features, well, let's just say that she gets a bit sidetracked. Can't blame her though. For such a jerk, he has the face of an angel. Thankfully, she gets a hold of herself. Prior to their meeting, she has already gathered adequate information. She now knows that they are still at the beginning of the novel. While she is deep in thought, Alexandros asks her if she has some sort of change of heart, for she is not acting as usual. At this point, there is only one thing she can do. She has to get herself out of their way. With a smile on her face, she asks her husband for a divorce. The Emperor does not take her words well, even chastising her for making a joke before him. Robellia expects this, of course. After all, Robellia is the one who handles internal affairs in the palace without any complaints. The original Robellia loves the Emperor so much that she even volunteers to do Aisha's part as well. Poor woman! That man is slowly becoming irredeemable in my eyes, to be honest. The new Robellia, however, will not let the same thing happen to her. She insists that she is serious about her request, telling the Emperor that she does not consider herself worthy to be his Empress. With an amused smile, Alexandros speculates that she is merely upset that he has been inattentive for the last 2 weeks. He apologizes to her, promising to come see her every day from then on. The charming smile he gives her almost melts her heart, but she knows that he is merely using sweet words to console her for now. She knows the tragedy that awaits her, so she will never be able to trust him. Steadfast, she insists that she is not fit for the position, even suggesting that Aisha can succeed her instead. Alexandro, thinking that she is jealous, assures her that he only accepted Aisha as a consort for diplomatic purposes. Robellia is irked that he thinks she is jealous when she doesn't really care if he pours all his love for Aisha. What she wants is a divorce, but the Emperor refuses to give it to her. Of course, why would he divorce her so suddenly? Alexandros offers that she can do whatever she wants other than a divorce. Smirking, Robellia bids him farewell. If he won't divorce her willingly, she'll force him to do so. On her way back, she runs into Aisha herself. Not interested in her at all, she tries to walk past her, but the girl begins to act friendly to her, so she is forced to act polite. But then Aisha asks her if what she did just now was another tactic to get the Emperor's attention. Well, it seems like the so-called main protagonist has a bit of a dark streak. Or could it be more? We just have to find out. Robellia can't help but laugh at how childish she is. She mockingly tells Aisha that she is trying to fight over nothing. As she turns her back on her, she makes it clear that Aisha can have Alexandros all to herself, for she neither wants him nor is she interested in him. Gotta love how easily she shuts Aisha down. With her words, the poor girl is left gobsmacked, gritting her teeth in anger. After all, Robellia does not care if they are each other's soulmates, as long as they keep her out of it. In fact, she has decided to become the villainess. She will spend a chunk of the national treasury until Alexandros divorces her. Another part of her grand plan is to move into Aisha's palace while she has the Empress's palace renovated. Of course, Aisha acts like a great injustice has been done to her. Part of the reason that the original Robellia perishes in the novel is because of how neglected she is when it becomes obvious that the Emperor does not favor her. The attendants become lax to the point that there is a draft in the Empress's palace. Wanting to be like Aisha, who is frugal, Robellia does nothing about it. As a result, she grows sick and dies. The new Robellia will not make the same mistake. Robellia is actually quite amused by how annoyed Aisha is by the situation. She even suggests that if she doesn't like sharing a space with her, then she should move to another palace instead. She is embracing her role as a villainess quite well. Robellia already expects Aisha to go running to the Emperor. She is right, of course, because not long after, Alexandros barges in during her tea time. He confronts her about taking over the consort's palace, but the Empress cheekily reminds him that he told her she can do whatever she wants. Alexandros calls her ridiculous, telling her to build a different palace if she wants. With a hard look on her face, she insists that she wants the consort's palace, and that it was him who told her she could do whatever she wants. For a moment, Robellia confidently faces the Emperor's intense gaze without fear in her eyes. Eventually, the Emperor gives in, telling her to do as she wishes. For a second, she is happy that she's won, but then she realizes that he still doesn't want to divorce her. She decides not to worry about that for now. Surprisingly, after living in the consort's palace, Robellia notes that it is unusually quiet. After all, she is expecting Aisha to cause a scene or something, but it seems like that's not the case. Even so, she decides to divert her attention to something more noteworthy, moving her stuff into her temporary home. She ends up taking up 70% of the space, and yet Aisha is to complain about it. Every time she encounters Aisha in the palace, the girl acts like she's not even there. She looks upset enough, which means that the Emperor has spoken to her to keep quiet. She needs her to pick a fight with her as an opportunity to get a divorce. At this rate, she will end up getting treated like trash just like in the original story. She has to do something even more wicked if she wants to get out of this place. With that in mind, she orders that she wants a new dress made. Everyone is surprised when the Empress decides to throw away all her dresses and demands to have a new wardrobe. She even has a famous designer come in for her. As Robellia gazes at the catalog, she recalls her hard past when she never even had a chance to wear dresses such as these. Even though she ran away from her family, she still sent them most of the money she had earned. She is not used to having expensive things, but she has to pretend. After all, Robellia is an empress, and she'll become suspicious if she acts otherwise. The designer is enthusiastically explaining the details of his creation, so Robellia is actually quite guilty of what she's about to do. She flings the catalog away, calling his work terrible. That's so harsh, Robellia. Poor man. She continues to insult the designer, telling him to show her something else other than the rags he has shown her so far. The designer insists that he doesn't have anything else, but Robellia knows he's lying. She knows that Aisha has been bragging about meeting him next week, which means that he has something prepared for her already. Oh, she is out for blood! Poor Mr. Dressmaker. Sorry, man, but Robellia takes her role as a villainess very seriously. The designer tries to argue that those designs suit consort Aisha better, but this irks Robellia even more. She deems him arrogant and demands that he show her the design right that instant. Seeing as the Empress has her guards moving closer in a threatening way, the designer panics and calls for his other designs instantly. Once Robellia inspects the dresses, she decides that she'll have them. When asked which one she likes, she declares that she wants them all. If she's going to be wasteful, she might as well buy them all. She will then sell them secretly and prepare funds in preparation for after the divorce. Later on, the emperor is bombarded with concerns from his officials regarding the empress's extravagant expenses. She apparently managed to spend 0.02% of the empire's budget in one day. One of the officials even suggests that consort Aisha is even more suitable as the empress. However, the emperor merely dismisses their complaints and suggestions as a nuisance. He sternly tells them that a few dresses will not affect their finances. He questions them as to why they think that Robellia's ability as an empress is not worth a few dresses. He reminds them that he has chosen her as his empress and that they have no right to question him. The Minister of Finance, the one who suggested replacing Robellia earlier, is replaced and sentenced to be confined to his estate for 3 months. He also reminded them that the Empress's prestige is the prestige of the Empire and his as well. He then demands a dress to be made that's 10 times more splendid than the ones she has made. After the meeting with the officials, the Emperor's secretary tries to warn the Emperor about the consequences of appearing capricious in front of the people. Alexandros, with a menacing look on his face, reminds him that his way of solidifying his power is through fear. If he intended to be a good and wise king, then he wouldn't have killed his own father with his own hands. The secretary can only recall how the emperor rose to power, getting rid of his father and brother without hesitation. He subdued barbarians and expanded the empire's borders. He defeated those who had challenged him because of his young age, and did not stop until they were in ruins. He can only hope that the empress does not see the dresses gifted to her by the emperor as something negative. Sometime later, Robellia is bewildered when boxes of a dress and pieces of jewelry arrive in her quarter. What is going on? When she was told that Alexandros had sent her something, she thought that he was going to tell her off for spending so much. Well, it's not every day that you get rewarded for bad behavior. Why on earth did he send her all of these? The dress is even worth the entire castle. It comes with a message from the man himself, telling her how he'd like to see her wear the dress when they meet. Robellia doesn't understand why Alexandros is doing this. After all, he is not supposed to have any interest in Robellia whatsoever. She sees how happy her attendants are for her, thinking that the emperor has finally taken notice of the empress's love for him. Her maids are naive, but she doesn't hate them. They have remained devoted to the original Robellia even as her influence in the palace has weakened. She is rather grateful for them, however, they don't understand what she needs. For now, she focuses on the Castleworth dress. She thought that her spending earlier was top-notch, but it seems that the emperor is on a different level. When the maids ask her if she would like to try on the dress, she announces that she will do no such thing because she plans to divorce the emperor soon. She can't take a gift from a man she will part ways with. During the Friday dinner banquet, Robellia arrives in a stunning dress. This event is held every Friday, and she rather thinks that it is a ridiculous way to show off the empire's wealth. But then again, this event is only possible because of Robellia's excellent event proposal. An official approaches her, complimenting her for the splendid banquet. It's Count Bartlett, a side character who wants Aisha to be the empress. Looking at his mustache, Robellia can't help but compare it to a goat's. Rather than accepting the compliment, she giggles at him, telling him that she will not be fooled by his empty words. The Count is quick to panic, trying to deny the accusation. She then asks why he suddenly feels grateful to her when he hasn't felt that for the last 3 years. She quickly turns away, leaving the man distraught as he tries to call her back. Robellia honestly has no idea why he has suddenly felt the need to flatter her now. After all, the real Robellia has already disappeared from this world. The emperor then appears, and once again, Robellia can't help but note how handsome he is. She used to cringe at the way the novel described the male lead, but now she really can't say that it was all exaggeration. Their eyes meet, and for a second, it seems like it's just the two of them, until the sickeningly enthusiastic Aisha calls out to the emperor using his name rather than his title. She rushes to the emperor, claiming how much she misses him and instantly attaching herself to him. Like a leech. Robellia can only raise her eyebrow at the scene before her. The consort then begins blabbering about how much she has been looking forward to the banquet because she gets to dine with the emperor and the empress like a family. Robellia can't believe that Aisha's attempts to provoke her are so weak and obvious. She even keeps on checking when the empress will get flustered. Robellia refuses to waste her energy in such pettiness, so she decides to focus on her other objective for the evening. She approaches the unsuspecting Marquis Wilhelm and splashes him with a glass of wine. With a devious look on her face, she apologizes, excusing her hand for slipping. Everyone is shocked by the display. The whole banquet is at a standstill. The situation escalates even further when she slaps the Marquis straight in the face. She even claims that her hand is slipping again. Goodness, Robellia, you're one ruthless lady. That dude probably did something horrid for you to act like this. Horrid things he did indeed. The man dared to touch one of Robellia's attendants. In fact, he is known for harassing young women. Well then, he totally deserves the smack he received and more. Robellia is enraged, determined to avenge her loyal servant no matter what. So she continues to slap him over and over in front of everybody. That is until Alexandros' voice echoes in the hall, calling out her name. Robellia knows he will stop her, but not before she can give her finishing blow. With a swing of her foot, she kicks the Marquis between his legs. The Emperor approaches her, grabbing her hand. Robellia knows that this will definitely get her a divorce, but instead of the scolding everyone's expecting, Alexandros merely checks on her hand. What? Robellia is starting to think that this man has gone insane. Alexandros is visibly worried about her injured hand caused by the smack fest she just did earlier. He orders the doctor to treat the Empress's bruised hand. Cheekily, Robellia suggests that Marquis Wilhelm also needs a doctor. The Emperor agrees with her without hesitation, confusing her even more. Why is he taking her side? He didn't even scold her in any way. I think Mr. Emperor is growing soft. When their eyes meet, the man gives her a sweet smile. She is so flustered that she has to turn away. The guests, as usual, begin gossiping about how much the Emperor dotes on the Empress. Naturally, Robellia is panicking. This is not how it's supposed to be. She has been doing things that will make him hate her. Instead, the man is now even winking at her and putting his hand on her shoulders after announcing the resumption of the banquet. Robellia glances at Aisha, and as expected, she does not look happy. Robellia speculates that Alexandros is doing this for appearance's sake. But one thing is for sure, this feels off. During the meal, the Emperor even teases her that she should eat her fill since she used so much energy earlier. But then Aisha decides to insert herself in the conversation, commenting on the Empress's dress. Her backhanded compliments are so obvious. She emphasizes the amount of new dresses Robellia has, making it sound like she's praising her. But Aisha is clearly trying to emphasize how much more frugal she is compared to the Empress. This girl is so manipulative! Alexandro then asks Robellia why she did not wear the dress he gifted her, inquiring if it was not fancy enough for her. With Alexandros' question about Robellia not choosing to wear the dress he had prepared for her, along came her confusion as to why he's suddenly acting like he cares. She's already made it clear she wants no good relationship with him, but the realization dawns on her that that's exactly what the others might be misinterpreting. And so, she decides to one-up the Emperor. Wanting to discourage Alexandros from speaking about gifts publicly, Robellia states that such clothes aren't suitable gifts for someone of her nobility. But cities or castles would. She believes she asked for too much, but upon seeing Alexandros' smile, she realized otherwise. The Emperor questions her demands, and Alexandros, holding her hand, insists they weren't sufficient. He affectionately declares her his only Empress, leaving Robellia confused about his indulgence. Aisha interrupts, expressing contentment with being by Alexandros' side, dismissing the need for lavish gifts. Robellia suspects Aisha's timing is driven by a desire for Alexandros' attention. However, Alexandros is quick to set her straight. He says she has no treasure, merely the set budget given to her position. Burn! I guess? The Emperor also proceeds to lecture Aisha about her misconceptions, questioning her ability to fulfill her responsibilities if she has such perceptions. Robellia sits silent as Alexandros lectures Aisha on actions that should be taken for the imperial family. She answers meekly when asked if she understands. Though Robellia suspects she didn't, Aisha will surely keep to herself for a while. More importantly, Robellia is trying to remember if Alexandros had called out or even reprimanded Aisha from the original story. Judging by the guests' reaction, it hasn't happened before. No matter the case, Robellia decides to eat, all the while observing Alexandros, who she thought was just an authoritarian. Meanwhile, he's just enticing the spooked guest to have a drink with him. Robellia won't lose in acting bad in public either. She proceeds to nitpick about the food endlessly, shocking the guests at how much the supposed gentle empress has changed and how opposite Aisha acts. Still, Robellia is unbothered since she heard it all, although she doesn't notice Alexandros observing her. After the quite eventful dinner party, nothing much of interest happened for Robellia. That is, until the arrival of a certain letter. It was the invitation from Duchess Selimon, though Robellia hasn't heard of her. Not even in the original. There's nothing about the Duchess on Robellia's papers that she has read, so they're not relatives, so she theorized that they must be friends. Since Robellia is a supporting character, it's likely her friends aren't mentioned in the story. It would be strange if she refused the invitation. Actually, she would be considered insane if she did so, with the Empire burning people supposedly possessed by evil at the stake. Which is something she doesn't want. Regardless, she's still curious about the invite. Robellia thought it better to go out as well, thinking ladies' tea parties are the best way to gather information, aside from asking maids and reading books. And so she went, meeting others outside the palace for the first time except designers. Judging from the Duchess's appearance, she seems to be the most influential, so Robellia proceeds with caution. Though initially Robellia hasn't figured out whether or not Duchess Selimon is friend or foe, the answer becomes quite clear after the latter's praise of her dress, calling it luxurious. Apparently, speaking about money is very vulgar and considered taboo among the nobles. The Duchess deliberately used the word luxurious for one thing, and no way does she lack basic etiquette. This leads Robellia to wonder if nobody truly cares about her character, even in the Empire setting, and even though her family is but a remnant of their former status. She must have thought she was a countrywoman with no manners, but she's not the Robellia of old. Robellia confidently flaunts her dress, saying it's from the many designs she can just choose from at Wystan Mystic, the very shop Duchess Selimon has to place an order in. This causes the Duchess to walk away embarrassed, and Robellia smirks at how the older woman couldn't stand in a fight she started. Still, she wonders who the other chair at their table was for, but moments later, Aisha makes an entrance. Everyone else makes sure to greet Aisha, and Robellia concludes that by doing so, they are ignoring her as the Empress. As the other guests greet Aisha, she makes her way to greet Robellia. But all the latter thinks about is how everyone is ignoring her. Not for selfish reasons. According to imperial etiquette, if a person of a higher rank is seated, never greet someone who has just arrived, and yet everyone ignored it. Aisha sits herself as the crowd continues to pour in their compliments. Robellia still stays silent, working the whole thing out in her head. She concludes Aisha is the one responsible for her invite, deliberately to put her down a peg. Robellia smirks, deciding she's done. She sweeps the table, creating a mess, and asserts that if the mansion's etiquette is chaotic, the tea table should match. As apologies ensue, Robellia confronts Aisha, suspecting her involvement. Aisha tries to excuse her lack of manners by saying she's new to the imperial castle, but Robellia just finds it annoying. Anyway, she did her damage. Aisha never expected to bow down to her, someone she looked down on. With a smile, Robellia says now that the party tea was spilled, she'll be leaving. But before that, she warns Aisha of her behavior around her from now on. Apparently, like a kid asking for help from their parents, Aisha told the Emperor of what had happened. However, Alexandros merely states that she has to take care of that herself, since as Emperor, he's too busy to deal with matters that occurred at tea time. Aisha then proceeds to project her innocence, asking if she had bothered the Emperor instead. Complete with tears in her eyes, too. The pretentious girl! Alexandros took a while to answer, and when Aisha replied, he knew it was a bogus story. So he asks her what she wants to do, and a visible change in her smile can be seen. Under the pretense of concern, Aisha states that she's worried for Robellia, as others have been increasingly insulting her after the tea party. She says that since talking to Aisha about her behavior directly would result in her not listening, Aisha says that Robellia will listen if it's from her husband. That night, after Aisha's request, Alexandros finds himself walking down a hallway. A smile curls on his lips as he thinks about how Aisha exceeded his expectations. She wasn't naive like her appearance, but rather clever. She hid her true intentions, but he noticed the slight change in her smile when they talked about what she wanted. And that was for him to reproach Robellia. In a world devoid of innocence, Alexandros acknowledges Aisha's hidden cruelty beneath her beauty. Despite keeping her close for that reason, her increasing demands have become bothersome. That night, he visits Robellia, who opens the door with a vexed expression. She inquires about the urgent matter, but he remains silent, only asking to enter. Alexandros realizes that it's been over a month since he last visited her room. Husband of the year, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, Robellia continues asking why he suddenly visited, since he's putting off their meeting for weeks, but Alexandros laughs, arguing there's no reason for a husband and wife to have to see each other. Alexandros continues to observe Robellia, and he concludes that her expressions have been diverse lately. She didn't have that before. It was all nervousness and a low-key smile then, but now, accepting that the divorce proposal isn't just to get his attention, it's like she's a different person. Unfazed, Alexandros appreciates that Robellia no longer imitates Aisha despite the added luxury. Surprised by her newfound look after 3 years, he praises her expressions. Confused, Robellia, expecting an important discussion, decides to go back to bed when that's not the case. Alexandros again repeats himself, and Robellia retorts that she's not wearing it for him, something he's quick to agree with, since she keeps mentioning divorce anyway. He merely refers to the fact that he likes how Robellia is able to dress beautifully herself, and this makes the Empress fall silent. Her mind could only focus on the sudden tickle in her heart. Alexandros is quick to observe her again though, asking why her cheeks suddenly turned red. After a brief moment of silence, Robellia reasons, not to a good avail, that the lighting must have been the reason for the sudden color on her cheeks. Alexandros himself covers his mouth, making him look like he's thinking, but actually, he's covering his smile. Things are more interesting than he initially thought. Amused by Robellia's startled demeanor, Alexandros appreciates her transformation from a wooden doll to a more vulnerable state. During a discussion about the dinner party and Marquis Wilhelm, he reveals having the Marquis taken away for aiding the Radican throne's power grab. Alexandros, acting out of love, covered for Robellia, removing the Marquis from the public eye to initiate an official investigation. So Alexandros shares his opinion. It seems the Emperor thinks that he and Robellia can have a good cooperative relationship. The public thinks they have a dry relationship. Them not expecting they're working together brings advantages. Robellia outright refuses, though. Working with her soon-to-be ex-husband isn't logical after all. Alexandros again offers to give her what she wants, but she gets vexed that he isn't giving up. Their pride clashes, almost like a dare to see who'll win between them. But as Robellia speaks, Alexandros gets an overwhelming desire. Uncontrollably, he raises his hand, intent on touching the soft, beckoning lips of his wife. His only thoughts are his desire to have her in his own hands. Alexandros' face inches closer and closer to Robellia's. His gaze is fixed on her lips, and his desire to touch them is stronger than ever. He knows he should snap out of it, and he isn't sure how Robellia will react to his sudden desire. He recognizes the difficulty in forming a relationship with her, and yet he reaches in even closer this time for a kiss. Before their lips touch, though, Robellia grabs a pillow and smacks the Emperor with it. While blushing uncontrollably, all she can muster is asking Alexandros if he's crazy. Furious, Robellia hits Alexandros, declaring they're getting a divorce. Ignoring his attempts to calm her, she kicks him out of her room. Later, she reflects on her mixed emotions, but ultimately goes to bed, convinced he doesn't have feelings for her. Despite disliking Alexandros' womanizer image, she questions her own excitement for the kiss. The next day, she wakes up unrested, more concerned about hitting the Emperor and the potential consequences. Still, if Alexandros hasn't acted as of now, he might have let it slide. The events of last night bothered Robellia, but she still has a lot on her plate. As Empress, she's in charge of some affairs in court, like support for cultural development, welfare for the working class, charity, and diplomacy with smaller countries. Unimportant tasks, but still needed. They're supposed to be shared by her and the noble consort, but Aisha is still new to the imperial castle. Actually, Aisha and her arrival in Robellia's body were the same, so she should technically also be excluded. Unable to convince anyone, Robellia wonders why she's still not released. Concerned maids suggest she rest while they handle the workload, but she hesitates, remembering her role as the villainess. Meanwhile, Aisha receives compliments from the maids about her hair. Suddenly, Robellia enters, shocking Aisha. Laughing, she exposes the truth and shifts the workload to Aisha, urging her to stop being lazy. Robellia comfortably sits on her couch, lounging as she sips on her cup. She left all the work to Aisha, and of course, she didn't do so well. Aisha tried to ask for a bit more time, saying she doesn't know about anything yet, but Robellia won't have it. The noble consort even tries to invoke Alexandros' name, but it does her no good. Aisha's performance is less than stellar. Repairs and maintenance areas are left unattended. Wrong people are extended for sponsorships, and in general, money is a waste. Just after 3 days, Aisha managed to ruin the delicate operation of the empire with her work. Aisha's maids plea for her to resume her workload due to the deteriorating situation. Though Robellia possesses the strength to handle it, she refuses to return the unfairness of the past. Angrily questioning why they approached her when she's not seeking a job, she inquires about Aisha's well-being. Learning that Aisha is struggling even with assistance, Robellia declines the offer, kicks out the visitors, and continues her strike. However, Emperor Alexandros eventually visits, proposing to take responsibility for Aisha's education, hoping to lessen Robellia's workload in the future. Judging by the way Alexandros speaks, Robellia assumes that this isn't just a private meeting with him. Still, the Emperor goes on about taking responsibility, saying he was inconsiderate and made things worse. He doesn't want her to forgive him, but he promises it will never happen again, even betting his name on it. Robellia starts to speak, but it seems Alexandros isn't done yet, saying he has no authority disputing affairs of the palace over her, so this comes as a request, not an order. As emperor, he genuinely asks Robellia a favor, his companion in governing the empire. Imagine Robellia's shock with Alexandros' sincere apology. Though she doesn't care if he or Aisha suffers, she does feel sorry for the people. So Robellia takes Alexandros to his word, saying that if he's promising it will not happen again, he should write a memorandum. Alexandros agrees, but if it was a memorandum, then there should be a condition met if he doesn't get to keep his promise. He asks Robellia to choose what it will be, and naturally, she asks for a divorce. Though irritated, the emperor accepts, saying he doesn't plan on breaking his promise anyway. While Alexandros asks for a pen and paper, Robellia can't help but feel disappointed that he still didn't agree to divorce immediately. He's making all this too complicated. In any case, Alexandros stuck to his word. Aisha had 5 teachers teaching her almost 10 hours a day. All the while, Robellia went back to work, toiling for 15 days, reverting the empire back to normal. They even started hearing rumors of the people praising her. As Robellia and her maids stroll through the gardens, with the latter giving the former news of the people's gratitude towards her, which she dismisses, Aisha stands in the corner, hands clenched at Robellia's proud exploits. Robellia's maids continued to talk about the Empress's exploits. She had thought of the idea to hire administrative experts. Still, when they let her know of the people's affection towards her, Robellia gets shy and blushes, thus endearing her towards her maids even more. But there's one person unhappy about all of this. Aisha's expression hardens as she overhears their conversation. Later on, she had her own private tea amongst friends. They praised the flowers she had put out, and Aisha reveals they were all gifts from Alexandros. The ladies affirm how the kind emperor truly loves Aisha, but Count Drape was there to set it straight. Alexandros was only nice to Aisha. He starts talking a bit more about politics, and Aisha allows him to after she notices he becomes chatty. The conversation reverted back to Aisha and her new study schedule anyway. She says she's studying because she isn't much of a help, which is true, and then she apparently felt dizzy. Her friend tried to call the servants, but Aisha refused, even apologizing with the most innocent of faces. They ask her how hard she's been studying, but she implies it's all to not be a burden to Robellia. She has a talent for gaslighting! Aisha continues on her subtle attack on Robellia, even using the fact that she hired administrative experts against her, as opposed to innocent saint like Aisha who's supposedly burdened by herself. Yucks! Along with the cost, Count Drape says that the Empress's behavior is no less the same when she took care of Marquis Wilhelm, and so the group discusses whether or not Robellia is the right person to be Empress. Count Drape then decides to showcase his supposed expertise in politics. Though he fails to impress the girls, they instead nominate him to voice out their concern to the Emperor himself. He tries to refuse at first, him being new to the court and all, but when Aisha says it will help her out a lot, the Count couldn't even say no. That performance by Aisha is even complete with tears in her eyes. As Count Drape declares his newfound bravery and the ladies praise him for it, in Aisha's mind, she got what she wanted easily. Old women in court wouldn't be swayed easily, but men trying to impress girls? It went as she expected. So much for being innocent, huh? During the next court meeting, Count Drape seems to doubt whether what he promised to do is the right move. Then, like a kid about to do something stupid, the young Count tries to justify his future actions. First, it's because he can't ignore what happened at the tea party. Then, it's because he decided to help his friends. After that, it's because Robellia is a vile empress who brought Aisha to tears, the latter being the most suitable for the empress position. And then he tries to say what he's about to do is for patriotism and loyalty. Geez, pick one! With all that anxiety, Count Drape immediately interrupts the 137th National Assembly as soon as it begins. His uncle quickly calls him, but he refuses to acknowledge it, believing he's grabbing the opportunity to showcase himself. Count Drape, along with 7 other nobles, had written a report and distributed among the court members. Marquis Jocko, his aforementioned uncle, shouts in horror for doing it without his knowledge, but the emperor signals him to stop. Alexandros asks if it truly was Count Drape's and the young noble's opinion on the report. Drape confirms this, so the emperor, with a smile on his face, asks them to continue. Drape takes this as the emperor being interested, so he goes on with confidence. All the while, the other members of the court start pitying him. Count Drape doesn't mind, though, as he thinks it's just old jealous men talking. Besides, he's too busy imagining himself climbing up the ranks of the emperor's court. When finished, Alexandros again asks if no one else influenced the count's opinion. The latter answers yes again, but what comes next is what Count Drape least expected. Alexandros expresses his contention that there's only 7 fools along with Count Drape in his court. First, he tackles their criticism of Robellia attacking Marquis Wilhelm. So Alexandros releases all the documents regarding the Marquis's crimes to the court. He defends Robellia's actions as putting her honor on the line in order to give them the chance to prosecute him. While everyone was praising Robellia's actions, Count Drape has finally begun to realize how grave a mistake he has committed. So he tries to find fault in Robellia's hiring or administrative experts, saying it's a violation of the Empress's duties. Oh, you're digging deeper into a rabbit hole, my friend. Instead of condemning it, Alexandros instead praises Robellia's decision to do so, citing Aisha's terrible control of imperial affairs as reason enough to do so. Fear grips Count Drape completely, and now he gets to experience the Emperor's wrath firsthand. With the matter settled, Alexandros menacingly declares the only discussion left is how to punish the 7 idiots who defamed his Empress. For Count Drape, he would have his tongue cut off. The poor man was dragged away as he begged for forgiveness. And all the while, the woman they slandered, Robellia, is minding her own business, concerned only because there's no news if her divorce proposal was brought up during the National Assembly. Count Drape faces unexpected consequences when he opens his mouth, as an unmerciful Alexandro orders the royal knights to silence him by cutting off his tongue. Count Drape's pleas go unheard. Meanwhile, Aisha, determined to take action, expresses concern over Alexandro's prolonged absence. Cici reassures her that Alexandro is occupied with his duties as emperor. Despite this, Aisha is motivated to contribute something useful to him. Cici suggests she embrace the role of a goddess capable of bringing new wonders to their world. After all, Aisha possesses unique abilities in this regard. Believing that Robellia lacks such powers, Aisha enthusiastically begins preparing to set her plan in motion. All that effort just to take Robellia down? What a waste of talent! Days later, Robellia gets an invitation to Aisha's event promoting world culture, which surprises her as it's not in the original novel's plot. Suspecting Aisha's motives, Robellia is perplexed by frequent encounters with Alexandro. Despite her usual role as a disruptive force, she gladly accepts the invitation. At the event, Aisha, in a knee-length pinkish dress, stands out among the nobles wearing long dresses. Unfazed by discussions, Aisha aims to regain influence in the palace and shines in her speech. In fact, the nobles wouldn't dare to do anything conspicuous because they know who she is. That is, except for one person, Robellia. Robellia captivates attention, even from Alexandro. Despite Aisha's glamorous appearance and confidence, she becomes nervous when shakingly introducing herself, while the nobles are drawn to Robellia. Robellia, in an off-shoulder red dress with a long slit on one side complementing her porcelain skin, outshines Aisha, who is surprised. To make matters worse, Robellia redirects attention to Aisha, who is left speechless with embarrassment. It's like the stage, which was supposed to be all about Aisha, suddenly turns into a surprising show where Robellia steals the spotlight. She's undeniably a girl on fire. Robellia graciously allows Aisha to continue her speech, but Alexandro surprises Aisha by draping his coat over Robellia's knees. Despite Robellia insisting she's not cold, Alexandro is concerned about the attention her exposed skin is drawing from noble men. Aisha, noticing Alexandro's care for Robellia, carries on with her speech. This time, she introduces smartphones, hoping to regain attention. One curious noble asks to try it, and the nobles now think Aisha can create these magical devices, unaware that smartphones are products of science. At this moment, Aisha's focus on herself ends up causing a problem. She just wanted to grab their attention, but the nobles now expect her to be a wizard. Her self-centered plan backfires as the nobles set their expectations too high. Who can blame them when she's the goddess of the empire? It's normal to expect greater things from her. Aisha defends herself that she's just an undergraduate, so she can't make it, betraying everyone's expectations of her. In their kingdom, if one goes to a university, it means that she'll devote her life to knowledge and education. So when Aisha mentioned the university, the nobles expected that she must be able to make smartphones. Robellia, looking at how Aisha panics, orders the nobles to be quiet because the crown princess is struggling. Robellia really knows how to push her deeper into shame. Aisha, determined not to let Robellia steal the spotlight, instructs servants to bring out a dish as a thank you gesture. Despite the dish not being ready, Aisha insists on serving it, believing her carefully prepared buffet will impress everyone. Excitement fills the room, but when the nobles try the foreign food, their expressions turn sour, and some hesitate to eat. Robellia, understanding their discomfort, plans to intervene to prevent the food from going to waste. Aisha is shocked when Robellia steals the spotlight and suddenly wraps up the event using the dish Aisha made. The nobles remain hesitant after the initial taste, denting Aisha's confidence as she sees Alexandro expressing interest in Robellia's cooking. Annoyed, Robellia accepts Alexandro's challenge, warning him it might ruin his taste buds. Surprisingly, he compliments the dish, convincing other nobles to try it again. Despite a lack of traditional ingredients, Robellia's creativity shines. During the tasting party, Aisha leaves to avoid being seen slacking, leaving Robellia to manage the event. Afterward, Alexandro invites Robellia outside the palace. Alert to Alexandro's intentions, Robellia is surprised when he assures her of wanting her as a collaborator and expresses admiration for her cooking skills, which he hadn't known about. Robellia argues that she's always been interested in cooking research. As Alexandro locks his eyes with her, she finds his warm smile fascinating. Despite her initial perception of him as a tyrant fixated on Aisha, seeing him by her side with her hand around his arm makes him appear less terrible. Wondering why Alexandro's behavior deviates from the novel, Robellia dismisses the thought that he hasn't completely fallen for Aisha yet, realizing he'll become a stranger after the divorce. Abruptly, Alexandro interrupts her thoughts, pointing out Robellia flowers in the distance, beautiful and poisonous. Despite Robellia's attempt to dampen the mood, Alexandro's intention was to enjoy the view with the Empress. Robellia challenges him, mentioning the Empress abandoned for 3 years. Alexandro gazes at her, acknowledging his shortcomings in their marriage. Robellia clenches her fist, unwilling to believe that he has truly changed. After all, Alexandro has a huge ego, and his acknowledgement lacks sincerity because there's no apology. But what if she's wrong? Alexandro concedes he could insincerely apologize to avoid the divorce and manipulate her into a political ally, but Robellia wants sincerity. He promises to genuinely apologize one day. Robellia struggles to comprehend, and he encourages her to forget it, dismissing it as nonsense. This makes Robellia suspect that Alexandro might be a sociopath, as all his heartless actions were solely for Aisha, and he lacked feelings for anyone else. He views everyone as beneath him, considering them trash. Despite this, Robellia pretends not to understand what he's saying, suggesting they forget certain memories. This surprises Alexandro, but he grasps that she simply wants to dismiss his words. Robellia openly admits she's not pleased with him, but her nagging has become a familiar presence and it doesn't bother him at all. Suddenly, Alexandro takes a step forward and requests her hand, expressing that it doesn't matter if she believes him or not. He just wants to enjoy the sight of the flowers with her without any ulterior motives. Overwhelmed by his charm, Robellia accepts his hand, but she firmly resolves not to fall for a man already claimed by another woman. She'd rather die than fall in love with him. It's too early to say that. I bet the house on it. That night, Alexandro escorts Robellia to her room, expressing that he had enjoyed the day. In response, Robellia suggests that he should go downstairs and see Aisha since she was the one who hosted the event. Rather than responding verbally, Alexandro delicately takes her hand and plants a kiss on it, casting a seductive gaze at her. Irritated, Robellia withdraws her hand, pointing out that they're on the verge of a divorce, and such gestures are misleading. Alexandro playfully teases her, insisting it's merely how one treats a lady. Another way of saying that there won't be a divorce. Robellia's face flushes, mirroring the fiery hue of her hair. She closes the door behind Alexandro, trying to convince herself that he's just a womanizer who doesn't take loyalty seriously. Unbeknownst to Robellia, behind the closed door, Alexandro grapples with his own confusion. It's as if he's intoxicated, unabashedly indulging in desires without hesitation. Days later, Aisha is even more agitated upon overhearing the servants and nobles talk about how lucky they are to have Robellia as their empress. Of course, it's like a dagger stabbing her, who can't even work on a single document. Cece, her worried servant, tries to comfort her since she hasn't eaten for 2 days. However, even that didn't work. When Cece closes the door, Aisha still keeps thinking why Robellia had the idea to make Korean dishes when she's lived in the kingdom her whole life. What are the chances that she can create a dish that is exactly the same from a totally different world, right? If for some reason Robellia knows about Korean culture, Aisha's weighing the possibility that Robellia also comes from Korea. However, there must be an oracle if the goddess passes through. The chances that the mentality and the memories of the people in the kingdom are reversed are just too low. It's most probably that Robellia overheard and learned Korean culture from somewhere. Still, that remains unanswerable because the only contact between the two worlds is the goddess who comes from the other world to spread new culture and help others. So it's impossible that only Robellia knows it and others don't. Aisha covers her face with her trembling hands, realizing how her relationship with Alexandro got so messed up, not to mention the social status she's worked so hard for. Clutching the bed sheets tightly, she struggles to comprehend how Robellia acquired the information. If Robellia becomes a significant threat, everything Aisha has worked for could crumble. On the other hand, Robellia revels in the attention during her visit to Manhwas Street. This area resembles a black market, where both legal and illegal trade thrives. Although not a fitting place for an empress, it serves as the perfect spot for Robellia to acquire certain suspicious items. Despite feeling sorry for the guardians, she has no choice but to spend all her money in this black market, risking disgrace to the imperial family, potentially leading to their divorce. Hours later, Robellia realizes the gravity of her impulsive actions. Originally intending to use her money on suspicious magical items like cursed dolls, she ends up making an unexpected purchase of intimate products from the last store. I can't imagine when Alexandro finds out about this. Just thinking of his reaction makes me want to laugh out loud. At this point, everyone will think she's buying stuff for Alexandro. Just then, her attention diverts to a commotion. Robellia's eyes widen at the sight in front of her, an auction featuring expensive and extraordinary items. Excited, she urges her royal knights to hurry, hoping to find something spectacular that could help expedite her divorce. However, much to her shock, the auction turns out to be centered around slaves. These prisoners of war are considered legal under the Empire's slave law, though it's uncommon for nobles to buy foreign war slaves due to ethical considerations. Robellia recalls a character from the novel who had a slave background. As the announcer introduces an 18-year-old girl named Banya, the bidding starts at 50,000. The young girl flinches and trembles as she's objectified simply for reaching adulthood. As the bidding continues, Robellia becomes increasingly disturbed by the sight of the poor girl being treated as a commodity. At that moment, Robellia steps forward and commands everyone to return home. As the Empress, her orders cannot be refused. The announcer warns of a considerable loss if she persists, but Robellia's intense gaze silences any further objections. To settle the matter, she hands him a check to acquire ownership of all the slaves. However, a new dilemma arises. The slaves lack basic knowledge, and releasing them would lead to starvation. Moreover, if a person with ill intent discovers their status, they might be enslaved again. To address this, Robellia makes a life-altering decision. She declares herself the master of the slaves, and they will now work in the palace to assist her. Meanwhile, in the palace, Alexandro seeks confirmation regarding Robellia's presence in Manhwas Street. His secretary is troubled by the Emperor's habit of inquiring about the Empress's whereabouts. But Alexandro's concern is more about Robellia's unawareness of the area's dangers. Determined to ensure her safety, he decides to go there himself. Holy moly, I need water, he's so hot! It's 45 degrees outside! The royal guards express opposition to Robellia's decision to let the slaves reside in the imperial palace with her. They argue that the palace is exclusively for individuals of a particular noble status in the empire. Robellia, however, stands firm in her decision, declaring it irrevocable. She asserts that she will take full responsibility for her choice and goes a step further, instructing that the slaves receive 3 hours of education daily on the imperial language, society, law, and basic studies. Banya, with a shaky voice, expresses gratitude to Robellia for giving them a chance to live. Robellia is taken aback, but soon realizes the immense fear the slaves must have felt. Slaves like her never knew where to go and what danger they'd face. All of them are adults, so it should be alright to teach them for about a year. After that, she will give them enough funds to live alone and become independent. Despite her eccentric behavior, there's still kindness inside of her, especially towards those who are oppressed. We stan the right queen. Suddenly, a man whips another slave for moving too slowly, callously remarking that he'd rather offer the child as food to monsters since they are all the same. Witnessing the cruelty, especially towards a child, Robellia knows she cannot stand idly by. Robellia shouts at the man to stop hurting the child and questions why there's one left if she purchased all of them. The man explains that the boy belongs to the auction house and isn't for sale, mainly because one of his legs is limp, making him less marketable. Still, Robellia declares her intention to buy the child and demands the whip. Oblivious, the man hands her the whip, and Robellia uses it to strike him, giving him a taste of his own medicine. She sternly lectured him that even if he's a slave, he shouldn't be cruel to a child. The man, paralyzed by fear and impact, can barely move. Warned by Robellia that she won't hesitate to strike him again, the man hastily retreats to save himself, leaving Robellia satisfied with the outcome. Proud of herself, Robellia is convinced that this incident will surely lead to her getting a divorce, and she anticipates an agenda to depose her. Unexpectedly, the boy speaks up, expressing gratitude. He acknowledges that his body is not in the best condition, but promises to dedicate his life to repaying the favor. Just then, Robellia recognizes the boy. If she's not mistaken, he's Caleb, the sub-male lead from the original novel. Contrary to his innocent and good-natured impression, there was a dark side to Caleb. He had been a slave from birth because his parents were prisoners of war, but he was self-taught and rose to the level of a 7th Circle Archmage. With his outstanding magic talent, he made a great contribution and shed his status as a slave. After that, he set up an information guild. In the novel, he had a crush on Aisha and used the guild to help her a lot. However, Robellia struggles to fathom meeting Caleb under these circumstances. She examines his face, holding both of his cheeks to verify if he is indeed the Caleb from the story. Although he should be 16 now, he appears undersized and malnourished, displaying more timid personality than the original novel. Caleb's face reddens as he becomes bewildered by the Empress's weird behavior. At that moment, Alexandros arrives and inquires coldly about what Robellia is doing. Robellia signals annoyance with a raised eyebrow, avoiding his question and instead asking what brings him to Lamancha Street. She speculates that he might be angry about the Empress visiting a black market. Proudly, she suggests he might scold her or even expel her from the palace. Alexandros remains silent on that matter and instead asks about Caleb. Robellia discloses that he is one of the 30 slaves she purchased. Alexandros persists, questioning why she attempted to kiss the boy. Oh, he's so jealous, huh? Robellia clearly didn't expect that kind of nonsense. She exclaims that she just looked at his wounds and that she isn't shameless enough to kiss a child. For some reason, Alexandros feels relieved upon hearing that. Alexandros admits that he's glad nothing happened. Well, it would be weird if rumor had it that the Empress touched a child, so Robellia assures him that it's not like that. Alexandros, on the other hand, doesn't understand what she's talking about. He's just jealous, Robellia. He can fool anyone, but not us. Then, Alexandros makes it clear that he is not angry with her for everything she did in Lamancha Street. He leans closer and whispers that he is, in fact, the owner of the street. Right after he ascended the throne, he bought the entire street with his slush fund to keep the border between legal and illegal under surveillance. He places his hand on her shoulder and tells her that only a few people know about it, including his secretary. And now, he's disclosing this matter to her because it's her, and she will soon know what it means. This is so low-key romantic! I'm so close to forgiving how much of a red flag he is. However, Robellia clearly understood what he meant. There's no fool in the world who tells such a secret to his soon-to-be divorced wife. His confession is an expression of his will to never divorce, while simultaneously expressing confidence that it's definitely not going to happen. Now that she knows his secret, it means that whether she wants to or not, she will be more deeply involved with him, and she doesn't feel good because she thinks she got tricked. Alexandros is so cunning, but we love him. That night, Caleb's intention is still the same. He wants to become her direct escort knight. Robellia warns him that becoming a knight is more dangerous than he thinks, so she asks him to find something more suitable for him. Robellia wants to give him a proper job since he's a talented child, but cleaning or carrying things is tiring with an injured leg. Just then, Caleb admits that he's born with a bit of magical powers. He just kept it hidden since he's afraid that his ability might be used for dangerous things. But disclosing it with Robellia just shows that he's willing to protect her with his powers. So, Robellia offers to let him work at the Research Academy to learn more about magic and to enhance his ability. But Caleb begs her not to send him there. He was bullied by his peers when he was younger, so he's afraid to socialize with others. Robellia can't believe that he got bullied, since in the original novel, he got revenge on the bullies. Robellia wonders if it's because he's still timid because of how young he is. Caleb, at this point, begs her to use him instead of abandoning him no matter the cost. Robellia has no choice but to agree to his request. She's planning to keep him for about a year anyway. With relief, Caleb is so glad that he can become her guardian knight, further expressing that it's the happiest moment of his meaningless life. Robellia points out that he shouldn't call his life meaningless because there's always a meaning behind every living creature. Suddenly, Caleb stands and approaches Robellia, saying that he will dedicate his body and soul to her, and if he has anything, even if it's a thread, he will give it all to her. He then proceeds to kiss her feet, but Robellia is getting uncomfortable as to how cheesy he is. Robellia warns him not to swear like that again because he will stain the clothes she gave to him. Meanwhile, in his office, Alexandros is bothered by Caleb's presence. He's been a thorn in his eyes, but he can't let anything affect his relationship with Robellia, no matter how much it bothers him. On top of that, he found out the list of embarrassing things that Robellia bought. The part where she purchased such intimate products bothers him more. As expected, his reaction is priceless. Now what will he do next? I can't keep track of how many times I reviewed the last part of chapter 24.5, and I know you guys did the same. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!